Good morning. Good morning. Kishan, totally your call as per your convenience. If you can follow the live class, sure. If you can't, then recorded is good enough. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We'll wait 2-3 minutes. Perfect. Great. Ashuram. Nothing to do with it, Aditya. These two are totally unrelated. Last 1 hour, that is it. As it is, we only went for 40 minutes. Narendra, you don't need to know that pattern. Or has nothing to do with you generally. Social reform movement is done. Perfect, Gulam. Anand Karat Shreyas, if you know that in Hinduism there are very elaborate weddings, very elaborate wedding rituals also. It used to be same in Sikhism also, but that was a very expensive way of marrying. So Namdharis and Nirankaris, they changed the way marriages happen today in Sikhism, wherein the Gurdwara is involved, and it's a very simple, straightforward ceremony, which is basically going to reform the marriage system within Sikhism. So yeah. Good morning, Samitha. Sony. Okay. We'll wait 2-3 minutes. Email ID. Abhishek.mishra19@. Kishan, you have seen most probably 2022 paper. In that, there would be a question on Arthashastra, Mitakshara law. Though Mitakshara was in the news, so it was basically a question out of current affairs. That year, 2022, the ancient medieval questions were extremely hard. Modern was still manageable, 4 questions easy. The questions were difficult, and that is what we call as an anomaly year. That's called an anomaly year. Every year, one subject becomes difficult. You would have seen this pattern. Sometimes it will be polity, sometimes it's economy, it's sometimes international relations, sometimes current affairs, totally obscure current affairs, sometimes it's geography. So 2022 was that year in which history was specifically those 6 questions were very difficult. So that year you had to manage out of the 13, 14 questions which came. If you could manage 5, 6, your job was done. Bhakti movement tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Tomorrow is a holiday, Tina. Day after tomorrow for weekday batch. Weekday batch. We meet Tuesday. So 2022 paper, if you will chase, you will then start to learn Dharma Shastras, which is not worth it. That is the basic point. Be it before it and 2023 proved to us that it was an anomaly year. Because 2023 the questions are extremely easy. So they just, you know how UPSC is, they like to play with students. So the history was the tool of Googly that day. Right, Kishan? But Mitakshara could be managed because those statements still can be managed. Because if you want, we can discuss the question. There's a catch in those statements. Because it said that all things, you needed to know Mitakshara law, South and Bengal one, it was reversed. Second one was that they said that all property written to women. That was a catch in that. But the point is that cannot be even managed by a person who's doing optional history. Ancient medieval weekend batch after this. I think it should come. I don't know the schedule. It should come to you. I don't remember taking ancient medieval art and culture in weekend. Or I've taken one. I think Samita and all are from that batch. I have gone through once. Once it has happened. It will happen, but it will happen now later in the year. Yeah, I think just one, Tina, Samita. I think you were there. We did art and culture. We had, yes, I remember the studio also. Got it, sir. But should we chase? No, no, no. Don't chase the paper. Kishan, that would be the worst thing to do. Never chase the paper. It should come first as prelims oriented. Yes, it will come, obviously, Aditya. Anything which is prelims oriented will come first. Don't have to worry about that. I would have to see my schedule, which I don't have right now, to see what it is. Yes, and if you want to do it quickly, I think as soon as my evening Modern India ends, I think 13th of December 2023, we start Ancient Medieval Art and Culture in evening batch. So you can attend that for sure if you want to. What is this chasing? Paper, it's called paper chasing. The worst thing which you can do. Basically, 1 year a question comes and you chase the pattern. For example, I'll give you a very simple example. 1 year UPSC asked that between 1 point and 1 point, how many states were there? Have you seen that question? That if I was traveling from 1 point to 1 point, how many states are there? Including the one which start and end. This type of question was given once. Now, all mocks next year, till today, you will get this type of question. But UPSC stopped asking this question only. This is called paper chasing. Once they will develop this type of question, they liked it, they took everybody by surprise, and then UPSC stopped asking this question only. So if you will still chase this pattern, it's called paper chasing. For example, as I said, 2022 paper history, if you will start to then read Mithakshara law, Dharam Shastra, legal books, it makes no sense because 2023 there was simple, straightforward questions. Sociology optional is, Kirti, it's totally on you. It bad. No optional is good and bad. If you like it, if you have an interest in it, why not? So there is no point in previous year questions. That I always tell you. Previous year questions tell you the depth, maybe the pattern a little bit, but nothing more. Because UPSC has this habit of changing patterns anytime. You've already seen one pair, two pair, and then it became only one, only two. Now what they will do, we don't know. Then 1 and 2 can be back also. This is something which UPSC always does, which is to play, keep on changing something. Since 2018 or 2017, there has been no paper which has been constant. Since that time when they asked a lot of current affairs question, since that moment, UPSC started to realize that we need to change the pattern. So they have started to just every year change paper. Generally, which people check UPSC mains copy? Most probably 99% professors. People who are associated with that field. Understanding concept is more important than pattern. No, pattern is equally important to understand. Okay, what can UPSC ask? But you have to understand it. You have to understand it. See, as I told you yesterday, UPSC is not about ratification, it's about identification and application of that ratification. That's the point. That's the point. With now this one pair, two pair, you have to know all these statements. You can't eliminate. Elimination goes out. So nobody can be fully prepared. That is true. I have never seen a student who says that I'm 100% sure what is going to come. Mostly 50% of the paper is totally new to everyone. So it's about how you manage that pressure. How to analyze previous questions? Just analyze which areas they have previously asked and what are the areas which are left. The left one are more important because the asked one will not be repeated. toppers themselves because of this, sir. Cutoff should be. It cutoff has been following. It's been falling. Started at around 120, came to 100. Last time it was 94. This time it was 88. The last which we know for general category. So the cutoff has been falling because the paper has been becoming more and more difficult. Okay, can we start? Everyone's here? Yes, they are. Okay. We start a new module. We start a new module, which is resistance to the Raj. This is now a new module for us. We have discussed advent. Please now pay attention. We've discussed expansion. We've discussed the three pillars of consolidation, which is either through institutions or you have economic or you have constitutional. Then we've also done the socio-religious reform movement, which we did yesterday. And now finally we are at resistance. Resistance to Raj takes four forms. The ultimate form is 1857 revolt. But before that, we have something called rebellions, peasant movement, and tribal movement. Now again, this part is descriptive. 1857 is it. So the target for us would be that by lunchtime, which is by 12, I guess, 11:30, 12, we start to move towards 1857. And our agenda is to cover 1857, then the consequences of it, thereafter the government of India at 1858. Then we have to cover early nationalism, in which we have to cover the concept of what we today call as pre-INC associations, INC, formation, and moderates, and thereafter previous year questions. So you can see, except for this part, which is big, these are smaller topics, quite small. That is why we can cover quite a lot of them. So most probably part A and B we will discuss this, part C will discuss this. So we'll try to do that vis-a-vis this. And resistance to Raj, again, if you understand the basic theoretical understanding, it's only descriptive and you already know the protocol of what we do in the descriptive areas. This is the agenda for today. If we can cover it, good. If we can't, that is not an issue. Now, we have what we call as resistance to the Raj. A lot of you asked me this question that since the British came, did nobody rebel or didn't nobody say something? And the answer to that question is yes, they did rebel. Between 1765 and 1857, there were multiple moments of resistance, but they have a certain characteristic. Be it rebellions, for example, Sannyasi, Fakir, Velu Thampi, be it peasant movements, and be it tribals. Now I'm trying to explain to you what is the nature of these and what is the issue. Their biggest issue or their issue is that peasant tribal rebellions, whatever it may be, they are based on localized issues. And with localized issues, the problem is that there is no all India impact. But that is one of the issues which they have. The larger issue is with them is that they do not understand how colonialism works. Because what they are doing is that they rebel against the agents of colonialism and not colonialism itself. And the biggest issue is once the British give concessions, they die out. So, if I imagine it, basically the problem of all these people are, or all the initial resistances, they target the branch, not the root cause. Not the root cause. Basically, they don't target colonialism, they are targeting the agents of colonialism. And therefore, if I cut all of these branches, will colonialism be dead? British agents would mean ICS officers, planters, whatever you want to say. Would colonialism be dead? No. Colonialism will again grow new branches. The problem is that all of these rebellions, be it peasant revolts, or be it tribal, the problem is they have a limited understanding, and you cannot blame them for that limited understanding of the process of colonialism. Because what they will do is they will seek help from the British to reform colonialism or get remedy from the agents of colonialism. So they are asking the oppressor to stop the goons who have been sent by the oppressor itself. This is the problem, that they have a very, very limited understanding. This is a weakness also. And obviously, we can't blame them because the middle class intelligentsia is also not cognizant of it. The masking of colonialism has been very effective. They are asking the tree to cut the branches itself. So first, they are based on localized issues. Second, they don't understand how colonialism actually is working. And third is that they are asking for British for concessions. Once the concessions come, they stop. So they are rebelling against the agent and not colonialism. Now you tell me one thing. For example, I'll give you a simple example. Uh, a school tells a principal says that the students have to stay 1 hour more in the school, and every teacher has to say that to his students. So the interface of the students is the teacher. Now, as soon as the teacher says that everybody has to stay back for 1 more hour, the students rebel against the teacher and go to the principal and start to complain about the teacher. But is the teacher the problem or is the principal the problem? It is the principal. So basically, the students don't understand that they are just agents of colonialism and not colonialism itself. And where they're asking for redressal is the genesis of the issue itself. For example, I'll give you a more concrete example here. For example, peasants target zamindars and money lenders or tax collectors or planters. The tribals target again zamindars, money lenders, or forest officers. And the rebellions are mostly against policies of the Raj. Now you tell me, are they the real root cause? Are they the real root cause? No. Zamindars, moneylenders, policies, forest officers, all have been created and empowered by the colonial government. But when the peasant gets legal redressal, when they get new policies, or when they get employment or concessions, they stop because they have limited understanding. Now, if you understand this point, I'll demonstrate it to you through the rebellions and through the peasant and tribal revolts, because this is the first thing which you need to understand. This is the weakness and the nature of resistance before 1857. What is peasant? Peasant is nothing but farmer. Are we clear about this? Power also one more factor, right? No, it's not power. See, you need to understand something. They are rebelling, but they are not rebelling against the right thing. That's the point you need to understand. A very, very, very short-sighted understanding of colonialism, which you cannot blame them for. We rebel against agents, not the root cause. That is true. Till today, it happens. Till today, it happens. I can give you another very simple example. Very simple example. You want to go to a party. Now, your mother does not want you to go, but she does not want to be the villain. So, she will tell the father, tell her or him that they cannot go. So, what you do is that you start to hate your father. But who is the root cause? The mother. Because she told the father to do it. So, you are now fighting with the agent, not the root cause. Get my point? You are only fighting the agent, the face. You're not fighting the real cause. Get my point? If you understand this, we can move on. Everyone has to say yes or no. Middleman is the puppet, yes. Jotedar means a big peasant. Jotedar's thesis, Shekhar Bandyopadhyay. It's a big peasant who replaced that zamindar who lost it under peasant, what we call permanent settlement. Okay. No, Tina, no. Now what we are going to discuss are called rebellions. Generic means they're neither peasants and they're neither tribals. So these are rebellions having separate issues. And again, here I will make the table, or rather the basic interface with you, which you need to understand. So you don't have to make this on your own. I'm making it for you. The first is called Sannyasi rebellion, and the other one is called Fakir rebellion. I will tell you the difference between rebellion, revolt, and mutiny also by the time we cover 1857. And the Sannyasi rebellion is one of the first, even before the grant of Diwani, after Plassey. This is the first major rebellion which the British saw, and it will go on for close to 40-50 years. Now, as you know, sannyasis or fakirs in that regard are mendicants, renunciants. They are saints who move around. But the problem which the British has, what the British has, is that, see, these sannyasis have a lot of mobility. And with people losing a lot of their jobs, they are not getting anything lost to the permanent or the farming out system. The number of people under the sannyasi banner starts to increase. But these sannyasis are mobile. They move around in the northern sector, they move around in the southern sector. And if people move around, the British have a problem, because these people can disseminate information and are also cognizant of the realities which exist throughout the British India itself. So what the British tried to do was to control their mobility, which is, they brought in certain rules and regulations in which they need to be registered, they need to tell where they are going, they need to have certain documents, as you need today permits to go into certain areas. And the sannyasis did not like that one bit. And in that context, the sannyasis will rebel, and they will rebel straightforward. They will go after the British, because right now there is no agent. They will start to attack the factories. They will start to attack the factories. They will start to attack the institutions, which were English. But the problem is that though they are attacking the British, once they start to, for example, control this rebellion, it starts to weaken, as we see over a period of time. So information could be anything. So with growing taxation, impoverishment of the peasantry, people evicted from land, the number of fakirs and sannyasis started to increase. They raided company factories and treasuries and fought with the company forces. But Warren Hastings was strong enough to subdue them in that regard. And their important leaders was Majnun Shah, Musa Shah, and Devi Chaudhrani. Now, Fakir rebellion is the same thing. The Fakirs are Muslim religious mendicants, and Majnun Shah is the leader here also, but he takes the help of distressed farmers and zamindars to fight colonialism. So you can see that the early manifestations are not very elaborate, but scattered onto the British understanding itself. So here the leader is Majnun Shah. We can add any 2-3 names which we want to. Musa Shah and Devi Chaudhrani. mobility and control over their movement, raided British institutions. Here it is Majnun Shah again against colonial policy and peasant and zamindars also involved. Are you now getting what to do with this information which I've given you in the PPT? This is how you basically are going to create a set of information based tables. I'm doing it for you here itself. And you don't have to worry about that. Only peasant and only social reform movement you have to manage. Everywhere else, I am doing it for you. Okay. Now, anybody, any issue, Sannyasi or Fakir? No issues? Great. Now let's move to the Pagalpanthis. Pagalpanthis under Karam Shah, it's a religious sect, but they become very straightforward against British rule. And under his son Tipu Shah, they will rebel against the zamindars and local British agents. The British will brutally suppress this religious group, but it will include even Hindus, Muslims, Garos, Halong tribe, that whole sector, Bengal, Northeast sector, proper uprising. But again, British crushed them very quickly. These are two happened before permanent settlement time. Those zamindars existed. Yes, zamindars existed even before permanent settlement. Zamindar exists from the Mughal period itself, from the ancient period itself. How land eviction was a problem because they were renunciants. No, it's not land eviction. The renunciants started to increase because of higher number of land evictions. Their numbers swell, and thereafter, when their mobility stopped, that is the issue. Okay. Now, Sannyasi Fakir. I am summarizing in this fashion itself. I don't know how to summarize separate than this. I'm giving you basic information and then summarizing it. So pay attention and stop typing. Sannyasi rebellion, mobility and control over their movement is something which they don't like, and they raided British institutions. Fakirs, Majnun Shah, again, one common thread between Sannyasi and Fakir. They involve peasants and zamindars. Peasants and zamindars existed throughout history in India. They're not specific to British colonialism. Thereafter, you have the Pagalpanthis. Pagalpanthis are a religious sect under Karam Shah, and thereafter his son Tipu Shah. They will rebel against what we call as zamindars and British agents were target. The British brutally crushed them. Brutally crushed them. Whatever is written on this slide is a summarization. Are we clear about these three? If you can remember what is written on this slide, your job is done, and you have to just go through this itself. You can ignore the individual slides and use this as a form of consolidation. Perfectly understood? Okay. Now, we have the Moplas, or the Malabar rebellion. This is a very interesting one. So, the Mopla community in Kerala is related to the Arab traders. So, when the Arab traders started to settle down in the what we call today as the Kerala sector, they started to interact with the Indian population, and that in turn gave birth to the community of the Moplas, who have the Indian origin but are also Muslims based on the Arab trader community which settled in the Malabar sector. Mapila, Mopila, same thing. There is a different, as I said, Mapilas, Mopilas, Malabari rebellion, same thing. Now, over the centuries of their existence there, since medieval period, they had become very big landholders, and in some cases used to act like zamindars, very big. However, once the British system will come in this area, which is Rayatwari, because in certain cases they had multiple tenants under them, who will get the right under Rayatwari? The zamindar, the mopila, or the tenant? Who will the British settle with? They will think that these are the rayats, and they will go with the tenants. So though they are in a way peasants only, but because they are very big, Rayatwari, they start to now lose a lot of land. They lose a lot of land. And they could see that the state had a pro-landlord attitude in Bengal. But in the Madras sector, they were anti-zamindar. And when they will start to lose their land, illegal cesses will be drawn. As it is, there is a lot of overassessment. They will rebel in 22 times in different years between 36, 41, 49, 56. And the British would have to suppress that every time. And only by 1870s that the British had managed it, but again it came up. Basically, the Mopla Muslims basically lost a lot due to the Rayatwari settlement. They were rich peasantry, but because they used to use tenants for cultivation, the British recognized the tenants and not them. And this is something which will become their biggest issue. So in our story, we add the Moplas. Here there is no specific leader against the land revenue system lost their status, became like tenants. So it's basically something which has a very interesting impact. Landlords gain power, peasants lose land. No, that is not true. Landlords gain power in permanent settlement. In Rayatwari, if you are even acting like a zamindar, they will go and settle with the tenant. So if the Mopla Muslims were in Bengal, they would have benefited. But because they're in Madras presidency, they are in the other side of the story, which is they are on the side in which the Scottish Enlightenment, the Scottish officers are doing the other way around. Are you getting my point? That there is a varying impact, and they would have not rebelled if they were in Bengal, but they have rebelled if they are in Rayatwari areas. Is this making sense to you? How the Mopla Muslims would have lost a lot. All the rebellions are for the same region. No, they are different. Sannyasi and Fakir is not specific. Pagarpanthi is Bengal. Mopla is Malabar sector. These are generic rebellions. They are not peasant or tribals. They are just rebelling on certain issues. Lost their status, became like tenants because in the Rayatwari areas, big landholders will not benefit. So because the people under them got recognized, they lost a lot of land. Mopla Muslim, that the what you are saying was Mopla rebellion associated with Hindu-Muslim conflict, that is a categorization which the British has given. Because most of the tenants under the Moplas were Hindu peasantry. So people tend to add this basic communal tinge, which basically is that the Moplas did not hate the British, they hated the tenants under them. But again, you will be doing the same exact Malabar Kerala sector. You'll be doing the same mistake as the peasant and tribals. Are the is the Hindu Muslim conflict here more important, or is the British the problem here? Kamba. Mopalas are not categorically, see, understand this point. Understand this point. Mopalas are not categorically man landlords. I have over centuries got 100 acres. I have a family of 10 people. Can I cultivate this land alone? Now I'm a peasant only. I'm a rich peasant. So what I do is that I divide this land and give it to tenants. Now, if this would have been Bengal, this 10 people would have got recognized. But when Monroe came, Monroe said that no, these 10 are like zamindars. We will not settle with them. We will settle with these tenants. And therefore, they start to recognize each tenant as the landowner. So now my 100 acres has now become 10 acres. So would I not rebel? Are you getting my point? So this is why Mopla Muslims are so angry. Ironically, the tenants used to be Hindu. So people tend to say that it is a Hindu-Muslim conflict. It is the British who created this conflict by not recognizing that the Muslims are not zamindars, because Kerala does not have zamindars. They are just holding land over a period of time because they are a very historical community, had a lot of money. Gaurav, what you are referring to is a totally different tangent which is related to the Khilafat movement. That I will discuss with you when we reach Khilafat. But also, again, there was a British created engineered hatred in this sector. I Communalism will be introduced to you by next week. Don't worry. I will tell you something very important, because you think these are organic things. These are not organic things. We should not be wasting so much time over one rebellion itself. But the point is, they're not organic things. Hindu Muslim hatred is not given in India. It is a British created innovation, which I will talk about when I come there. As of right now, can you just remember what I'm writing in this slide? Can I move on? Because this is again the same type of area where we are stuck. Only basic facts need to be remembered over a period of time. That's it. Okay. Okay. Now, Kuka we already did yesterday, but I told you Kuka can be seen in both perspectives. The Namdharis can be seen as a movement within Sikhism also, but also as a rebellion in that regard. They used to wear white and hand-woven cloths, boycotted British education, product and laws. Under Ram Singh, they will rebel in trying to restore Sikh prestige and power. He will be captured and exiled to Burma. So here, Kuka rebellion, Ram Singh against British domination over Sikhism, wanted to restore power of the Sikhs. Now, I am telling you one more thing. Whilst doing this, you need to understand something. Doing a thesis on any one of them will not get you anything. That is why I'm actually literally making this in front of you, because you should see how I condense information. This is called condensation of information. There is a lot which has been given to me. I condense it down. And this is how you learn certain areas which are descriptive. Because what you will start to do is you start to Google, and you will start to then increase the number of information or the level of information which you have. Try to keep it as low as possible, because that will help you in remembering for the examination what really matters. Now, thereafter, we have the first mutiny in India. First mutiny in India, which is not the 1857 revolt, but the Vellore mutiny. See, half of this nation, maybe 85-90% of the nation, does not know that even before 1857 there was the Vellore mutiny. And basically the 1857 copies in a way a lot of things which were done in 1806 in Vellore. Vellore regiment used to be a very important regiment in the Madras presidency, and it used to be under John Cardock and William Bentinck before Bentinck became Governor General of India. And previously they had allowed caste markers and earrings and different type of turbans to be worn. But when they prohibit caste markers and turbans to be worn, and there was more standardization of uniform, the what we call as soldiers in this area will rebel, and mutiny is when army rebels. It's called a mutiny. Coup is when the army captures power. Coup means when army captures power. This is not a coup, it's rebellion. And ironically, they will unfurl Tipu Sultan's tiger striped flag along with declaring that Tipu Sultan's son is our leader. Gillespie is going to brutally crush the Vellore mutiny. But what is interesting is, isn't this the same pattern which 1857 saw? As soon as the mutineers rebelled, they went to Bahadur Zafar. And after they went to Bahadur Zafar, they started to now say that Bahadur Zafar is our leader. So they went back to Tipu Sultan, they went back to Mughal Emperor. People tend to forget that the Vellore mutiny is something which is much more older and more important in this story than 1857. And people tend to say, okay, Madras did not rebel, South did not rebel because they had already rebelled 51 years back. And Gillespie made an example of every soldier. They were put in front of a cannon, they were tied in front of a cannon and then blown out. That is the level of brutality which these Britishers showed to these men. And in that context, it was very clear that the South was never going to rebel again because they had already rebelled. The British regiment in Vellore had already rebelled, and they had already seen what happens to mutinies. So please understand this, that the first mutiny in India or any first major rebellion in the army is not 1857. It is rather Vellore mutiny. Unfurled means to open up. So basically, Vellore mutiny is very significant in our story. This is now you tell me whatever is written on this slide, anybody has any issue? They scared them to such extent that they, yes, that is true. Not scared them. They already knew the consequence. Why British don't want to wear earring? Why British don't want to ear? Understand this point. Kamba, in army, discipline is something very important. You can't wear an earring in army also, because in combat, in what we call as army discipline, everybody needs to look the same, everybody should have the same discipline, and everybody should have the same training. So if every soldier is going to wear a different uniform, that does not show discipline. Uniformity is the name of the game in army. You tell me, you have yourself been a part of an army, but you don't call it an army, you call it school. Were you allowed to wear something different when you were in school vis-a-vis the uniform? Discipline is based on uniformity. And Vellore mutiny, and there will also be an element of this in 1857 when caste markers were removed, they will also rebel. Vellore is the first mutiny in India in 1806. Are we clear about these things? Rebellions. 6 have done, 4 or 5 are more. I hope you are getting the point of this discussion because I really want to move to 1857 as quickly as possible. Okay. Now, Vivek, your issues are totally different. Why are they tied to a cannon? Okay, they were shot. That is a way of showing brutality and showing punishing. What are caste markers? For example, turbans, certain what you call a sacred thread, earrings. So some people wear a different type of cloth. So there are different type of caste markers. Was 1857 transcend these mutinies unlike it was? No, Kishan, we will discuss that. 1857 is a little bit bigger but is still plagued with the same issues. Are these revolts only for basic understanding? Yes. None of the revolts will be asked as a full separate question. They have a certain purpose in a story. What is the role of William Bentinck? Bentinck was one of the regiment commanders. Cardock and Bentinck will see the rebellion. They will ask Gillespie to crush it very, very, very brutally. So Bentinck, the Sati Saver, is also the one who killed every officer, every soldier who was there in Vellore. Okay, now we move to Veluthampi. Veluthampi rebellion is a very interesting one. Veludam, देखो, Thampi, Tambi, same thing. You will find both spellings in the book. Thampi, Thambi. You will find both places. Was the Diwan of the Kingdom of Travancore. Travancore will sign subsidiary alliance. And as you asked me, did not someone rebel against subsidiary alliance? Sorry. Did somebody rebel against subsidiary alliance? Yes. Yes, Veluthampi did. Will be captured and killed. So, the answer to your question, which you asked me previously, did somebody rebel against? Yes. Veluthampi or Thambi, whatever you want to call it. Veluthambi. And the reason is subsidiary alliance of Travancore state captured and killed. Travancore, if you remember, Third Carnatic War, not Third Carnatic War, Third Mysore War. You remember? What is the connection of Travancore there? I am not. What is the connection of Travancore? You are acting like you don't know Travancore. What is the connection of Travancore? What is the connection of Travancore? I want to know what is the Travancore connection with Third Mysore War. But why a normal person rebel against it? Because it's not a normal person, a diwan. He was the one who was controlling revenue. He got frustrated because of the subsidiary alliance way in which the king of Travancore had sold off Travancore. So he was a patriot, so he rebelled. Travancore tried to buy Dutch areas in Calicut. They were buying Jalkotal and Kannanore from Calicut itself. and Kochi itself. And that was an area which came under Tipu Sultan. That is the connection, that same Travancore. Are we clear? I don't know why people are today quite distracted in a way. Issues are totally different itself. Are we clear? Velu Thambi, Diwan, Subsidiary Alliance captured Martyred. Can I move on? Okay. Because this area is not that difficult that we need to pay so much attention here. Then you have the Paika. Paikas were under the Gajapati rulers in Orissa. They were getting their salary as a tax-free land grant. British come and now ask tax from the Paikas. It's a community. And once the Paikas refuse to, the British start to now extort money out of the Paika community. The king of the military chief of the king of Khurda, which was under the Gajapati rulers, his name Bakshi Jagbandhu Vidyadhar, he will rebel against the British, but will later also be captured and be martyred. So, very simply, Paika rebellion is related to the Paika community. Paika rebellion, Bakshi Jagbandhu Vidyadhar used to get salary in land which was tax-free. British started to extract revenue, so they rebelled. After Paika, we have Ramosi. After Ramosi, we move to peasant. What is the Ramosi uprising? These are the lower rank officers of the Maratha army. Chittur Singh is the leader. Ramosis did not want to be under the harsh collecting methods and assessment of land revenue by the British. They will rebel under the banner of Umaji, and they will say that there's scarcity and famine in the Pune sector. However, once the British will offer them land grants and make them the hill police, they will stop the rebellion itself. So the last major is Ramosi. Ramosi Chittur Singh army officers of the Marathas, land revenue extraction from them. British gave land grants and made them hill police. The rebellion stopped. Now, please tell me, I have discussed with you 9 rebellions, generic rebellions. Their leaders, their issues, and what was the response has been captured in these 2 slides, slide number 12 and 13. Other than what is written here, obviously each of them have a long bond story. There would be multiple stories related to it. There would be a lot of interesting things which you could know. You may know, I may not know. That's not the point. If you can learn what is written on these 2 slides, your job is done for this area. Why they stopped when they got hill police? Because when they got employment within the British or state, they got certain form of money, and therefore their major issue was that they were being asked to pay a lot of revenue. I told you they are myopic in their vision. They are myopic in their vision because they are seeking concessions. So are we clear about these 9? Can I close the story here? And as I said, each one of them would have a long drawn story, which is right now irrelevant to our GS level preparation. Maybe under optional, you may have to go through that story. In GS level understanding, any question will revolve around these 3 to 4 basic factors. Can I move on? Britishers understand weakness and stop the movement. Yes, that is true. Okay. Now come our peasant rebellions. There are other minor rebellions also which are happening across the Indian subcontinent, but again, not important to our main story. Now, we talk about peasant uprising. Here we only have to discuss 4. Is everybody following me? Please, because you're a little bit distracted today. Little bit too distracted today for the class itself. Because there is a lot of information in front of you. I've told you last moment of little bit stress. Anupali, you joined right now. Does anybody know, remember Anupali from yesterday? No. No, you don't remember. 2 minutes wasted. You joined 1 hour late, Anupali. Why? I told you I know everybody's time of joining. Okay. You have Rangpur, Pabna, Deccan Riots, and Indigo. There are 4 peasant uprisings. All these 4 peasant uprisings have their story related to British colonialism, wherein Rangpur, you have Ijardar or farming out system. Pabna is landlords. Deccan Rights is money lenders. And Indigo, as we know, is planters. So you see, if I'm telling you the main systemic cause, are these colonialism or are they agents of colonialism? They're basically agents of colonialism. And that is why these peasant uprisings, they will stop as soon as there will be certain type of concession. For example, Indigo Rebellion will stop when the Indigo Commission will be formed. As soon as Indigo Commission will be formed, it will stop. Then Deccan Rights will stop when you will get what is called the Deccan Agriculturalist Relief Act. And Pabna will stop when we will have what is called as the Bengal Tenancy Act. And here the British will intervene. And you can see that in all 3 cases, and in one of them, the peasants pleaded to the British that they were the subjects of the Queen and they should be treated in the right way. They were asking the Queen to stop the exploitation which was happening on them, not understanding that the Queen was the agent or the root cause of exploitation in India. So peasant uprising gives you a very good understanding of how very short-term understanding can be dangerous for resistance generally. They all were not cognizant that these people were created not automatically but by colonialism itself. I'm emphasizing this point because you should know a major weakness and nature. So let's talk about first Rangpur. Rangpur in the Bengal sector was one of the first places where our very good friend Warren Hastings applied the farming out systems. It's also called the Ijdari or the Ijardari system. Ijardari system. And the company was already squeezing as much as possible from this area. But here the problem was not the British. The Ijardars were not doing good for the welfare of the farmer. It was this person called Debi Singh. Debi Singh, who's the Ijardar of Rangpur and Dinajpur, was very brutal. Very, very brutal. He used to basically extract so much that famines and indebtedness had become so common that people started to hate Debi Singh. And therefore, Debi Singh practiced extremely harsh measures against the peasants, and the, the peasants and even certain times the smaller zamindars went against Debi Singh and fought against him under Kena Sarkar. So you can see that Debi Singh was a product of colonialism. And for in our first story of the peasant rebellions, it is Rangpur revolt or rebellion. It is under a person called leadership will be Kena Sarkar, and it is against Debi Singh, the Ijardar of the British allocated revenue unit of Rangpur and Dinajpur. He was harsh because he lost control rights. If no, shares. What is farming out system? Have you done economic history with me? Ganesh, same question I am going to ask you. Have you done economic history with me? Warren Hastings had a model. District collector. Give it to the highest bidder. That highest bidder is called Ijardar or Ijdar. This system came before permanent settlement. And it was applied by Hastings in Bengal in these early areas. Later, permanent settlement will be established, but wherever farming out system was, they did not go with it. This highest bidder could be anybody, and therefore, Rangpur and Dinajpur, and therefore, they could be extremely oppressive also. Are we clear? Again, this is a presumption. This is called long-term Gajni effect. That you know something but you forget it. And in weekend batch, this is something you have to take care of. Because there are five days gap, the Gajni effect becomes even more relevant. You said Ijdar, the person who have Ijjat. The word Ijdar comes from the word Ijjat only. So Izardar or Ijdar comes from the word Ijjat. They are the ones who hold the highest bid. Okay. Second, are we clear about this? Anyone else has any issue? Standard story, basic things I'm telling you. These Indigo, Deccan, and Pabna is more important that way. Okay. Now we go to Indigo. And Indigo, I don't need to tell you what is the issue with Indigo generally. Indigo is one of the most harshest crops when it comes to any commercialized crop. It takes away the nitrogen out of the soil very quickly. And because that soil will lose fertility very quickly over a period of time, the yield keeps on falling. And Indigo was mostly operated through the Rayati system in India. Under Rayati system, the peasant will grow on his best soil, Indigo. He'll be given an advance. That advance now becomes a debt trap because he'll be given 100 rupees to produce 10 kgs. Then next year, automatically his yield will keep on following, and there will come a time that the debt becomes so much that the British don't even need to give the advance, and now it becomes a proper debt trap. The peasants who wanted to leave the Rayati system, they were beaten up. Their crops were destroyed. Their families were intimidated. There was a lot of flogging, which is torture. Indigo, when the synthetic dye came up, still they were making our peasants produce indigo because it was much cheaper than synthetic dye, though it was irrelevant and obsolete. And by 1860, the indigo planters had had enough, or the cultivators had had enough, and they rebelled. So here the agent or the mirror or the face of that rebellion was the planter, who was seen as a problem. When they sent the goons and the dacoits or these thugs to go and beat up the peasantry came together and beat them up. There was social boycott wherein the peasants were not allowed to go to the or the people who were working in the household of the European. They said nobody is going to work in their house. Let these white people work for themselves. And there's a proper campaign which starts. You will have Deen Bandhu Mitra's most celebrated drama, the Neel Darpan, which will start to tell the plight of the indigo cultivators in Calcutta. There will be a lot of coverage about it. There will be some people who will also get involved. And once it became too big for the British to manage, the British will appoint what is called as the Indigo Commission. Indigo Commission was established and it was given the task of inquiring into the illegal cesses and illegality of the indigo planters in Bengal. And the Indigo Commission will stop that practice. As soon as the Indigo Commission will be formed, the Indigo Rebellion will stop. Because this is what they wanted, which is the British inquiring about their own exploitation. So here again, the standard protocol remains. Dye plant, Bengal, Bihar, international market was there. I've already discussed, if you remember, indigo with you in a lot of detail, which is Nij and Rayati. So I am taking the luxury of presuming that you know it. If you don't, you can tell me. But if you do, I'll move forward. Which is Nij when the planter produces, Rayati when the peasant produces. And when the peasant produces, he's in a debt trap. Okay. So the indigo planters were mainly British, had a very good relationship with the DM, the officers also. As per the contract, the tenants were given a token amount as an advance and required to grow indigo in the best lands and sell the produce to the planters at a fixed price by them. Now, the fixed price by the planter was much below that of the prevalent market prices. The system took away the freedom of the tenants to grow crops on his own choice and sell them to the buyer of their own choice. There was flogging, kidnapping of tenants, their families, members, physical attacks, destruction of property to compel the cultivators to produce it by the planters. And in that context, we will have in the Nadia district of Bengal, in Govindpur village, two brothers Digambar Vishwas and Vishnu Vishwas, who will basically say we will stop cultivating, they will beat up the armed men sent by the planters, and now the social boycott of the planters will start. They will socially boycott them, there will be violent clashes, and the outcome is successful for the planters for the cultivators in a way, because cultivators across the sections had a lot of leadership. Even medium-sized landlords gave a lot of leadership. It got a lot of coverage also, wherein, for example, Harish Chandra Mukherjee, Deen Bandhu Mitra, Neel Darpan, all these things got this whole idea quite popular that the indigo cultivators are under distress. Missionaries also were saying and criticizing the British. The commission will be established. It will ban all unlawful oppressive practices, and that will basically fizz off this movement itself. So we have Digambar Bishwas and Vishnu Bishwas. One second. Digambar and Vishnu Bishwas. Indigo Revolt. Not revolt, rebellion. Rayati system had become oppressive and cultivators rebelled. Outcome: Indigo Commission and Neel Darpan of Deen Bandhu clear. Did German dye come when they banned indigo plantation? German dye was already existing. They were still making us produce that. What is the compensation? Nothing. They said we'll write off the in many cases it wasn't also write off the debt, and the planters will not be allowed to do oppressive things. But on the ground, nobody really pushed that. If Indigo Commission was so good, then Champaran would not be needed by Gandhi in that regard. The Bengal, again, Kambha, you are confusing something. You are confusing permanent settlement and Rayati system. That is called Rayatwari system. Rayati and Nij are two systems within indigo cultivation. Permanent settlement and Rayatwari system are land avenue settlements. How? Why the missionaries critique? Because they could see the plight, and as it is, the missionaries were always irritated by the British government that the they were not allowed to have a free hand in Christianity. That's the basic point. From then on, the indigo cultivation stopped in a way, but also not, because in parts of Bengal, Bihar, still indigo cultivation was happening, and that is why Teen Katia system was there, which Gandhi will intervene later. Search forcefully indigo cultivation. Why? Because you can get cheap indigo, cheap dye, even cheaper than the synthetic dye. We'll discuss what is the difference between revolt and rebellion, Gaurav, have even in this day itself, today. I have to give you context for that, which I can't give right now. Can I talk about Deccan riots and Pabna? Deccan riots, Pabna. Okay. Now comes Pabna. Pabna is again a district in the Bengal sector. You have in 1870s Ishwar Chandra Roy, Shambhupal, and Kudimullah who are involved in this. And Pabna is a very good example of landlords being the target of rebellions, or the fact that landlords are asking for too high a rent, dubious way of cultivating or measuring the cultivable land, very high rent by landlords. Landlords will be the way in which these protesters are going to protest against. And the British, what they will do is they will introduce what is called as the Bengal tenancy law, under which these people who are working under these landlords, they will be given a little bit of concessions. So the the zamindars taking excess is what they wanted to remove, stop the zamindar excesses. They did not demand structural changes. They said, okay, permanent is okay. We just want the zamindars to be better. They will go for litigation. They will start to raise funds. They will refuse to pay rent in certain areas. The Yusuf Shahi Pargana was the first place where it started. And very simply, Bengal Tenancy Act will be enacted in 1885 to give some protection. The government will act like a mediator between the zameen and the zamindar and the peasant. This is the joke of the century, that the same government which was producing the and giving the zamindar so much power, it was acting like a mediator. And this is why you see that these rebellions are very myopic, very short sighted in that regard, very short sighted. So we have Pabana rebellion, Ishwar Chandra Roy, and Shambhupal. And against landlords of permanent settlement, high assessment and revenue extraction. Outcome: Bengal Tenancy Act 1885. Some rights to the tenants. As you know, tenants are one who don't have their land, they work on someone else's land. Now we go to the last one, then I give you a break, which is Deccan. Now for Deccan, I need to give you a little bit of context. Can I discuss Deccan? Little bit of context we need. That is it. Okay. Now, the Industrial Revolution had happened in Europe, specifically in Britain. It was a textile revolution. Being a textile revolution, one thing is very clear, that it needs cotton. Now, we believe that we were too important in the cotton trade, but between 1700 and 1860, 90% of all cotton which was flowing in the world was coming from America, which is called long staple cotton, the best cotton which there is. And India share maximum at this point of time was 5 to 6% cotton from India. And for the same reason, cotton prices were dictated by America. Cotton price was dictated by America. However, in 1860, over the issue of slavery, the American northern and southern states will fight. And between 1860 to 65, that is called the American Civil War, wherein the Americans were fighting amongst themselves for should slavery be abolished or not under Lincoln. Now, if the supply of cotton was very high from the American side, it will very quickly fall. And India's supply was already very low. And now there will be what is called as the cotton boom. In this period, it's called the cotton boom of India. All cotton mills will be developed at this point of time. There was a 3000% increase in cotton sowing, as this was an opportunity for India because demand remained constant, but the supply 90% fell. If it falls so quickly, what will happen to the price? If supply falls so dramatically and demand remains constant, prices had went up, skyrocketed, spike. For 5 years, people will enjoy. One of them was Jamshedji, Nusrawanji, Tata also. The Tatas, the Birlas will actually become Tatas and Birlas at this point of time. But as soon as the American Civil War was done, if America was being producing 1000 tons and India was producing 10 tons, and this was still 1860, by 1860-65, there was 0 tons and India started to make it close to 500 tons. And in 1865, all is back. 1000 tons is also back, and we are producing 500 tons. What will happen to price in this case? When this is called oversupply, and prices will fall dramatically. And in 1865, what we have is called the cotton crash, in which even the Tatas got bankrupted. It's called the cotton crash in India. Now, the point was that this peasant had started to sow because he thought he will get a big price. But now he got nothing, and the rent had also increased because the landlords knew that cotton had become expensive. So rent has increased, price has fallen. And now the peasant has no other option but to go to money lenders to give them money to pay the landlords. And money lenders will become such a big issue in the Deccan sector that the peasants will rebel against the money lenders. They will burn the records of the money lenders, and there will be multiple distress in the agriculture. And the British will again intervene and introduce what is called the Deccan Agriculture's Relief Act, under which most of the debt was waived off. So the Deccan riots, as they're called, is based on the cotton boom and bust. Pune Ahmednagar, 1875 it will start. By 1885 it will end. Increase in rent paid by the tenants and landlords. Drop in price of cotton after American Civil War. Cotton fetched high prices during the war, led to many peasants to cultivate cotton, but now the prices will slump. And when it will slump, very bad harvest in 1875, 50% increase in revenue by the British also. And the money lenders will start to become very, very exploitative, very high rate of interest. And this was now directed against money lenders. Simple, straightforward point. Riots will break out in 6 taluks of Pune and Ahmednagar. Debt bonds will be seized. Social boycott of money lenders. They will destroy whatever records were there. MG Ranade and Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, which we'll discuss very soon, is a pre-INC body. They will start to now support the peasantry. Small peasants will be under a lot of distress. They will refuse to pay rent. And the British will then start in 1879, the Deccan Agriculture Relief Act, that was passed to give them some legal remedies against unreasonable demands. Legal remedies, that is it. Ahmednagar, Ahmedabad are different. So we add it to this and we take a break now. Did after these rebellions, did peasant tenants' life improve? No, nothing. Same as always. Can we take a break and then start tribal? 4 peasant done. Yes? Tribal, it will not take a lot of time because I've already done half of the job here. We want to discuss the causes. Okay. So we come back at 11:45 and we take the story forward. Half of modern history is connected to Bengal. So, what's the issue? Because Bengal was the epicenter of British colonialism. So, Bengal. After 1911, Delhi. You can say 100% of modern post-colonial India is related to Delhi. So, it is not Bengal history, it is Indian history. Stop talking like that. Okay. See you at 11:45. Welcome back. Okay. Can we start again? Yes, the class has started. I should be in front of you. As I explained to you, there will be a black banner like this. And if everything is fine, it will still show. Okay. So before lunch, where we break at close to 1, what we have to discuss is tribal movements. Now, there are 3 aspects to this. The 3 aspects is cause, nature, weakness, and there's one section in which how did the British handle it later. This is not relevant for you vis-a-vis what we are having discussion right now, but for your polity it is very interesting because your 5th, 6th schedule, 340, 341 article, all those are actually related to the British response, and the idea of scheduled areas and all comes out of the British response to all these things which are happening generally. Now let's first discuss cause. Why would the tribal movements happen? And the answer to this question is very straightforward. There were 4 types of factors which made the tribals basically extremely angry towards the British. And more than that, unlike tribal movements, Santhal, Munda, and certain tribal movements, even in the Northeast, were very cognizant of the fact that it was not the agent, it was the British who was the problem. And therefore, the first cause of the tribal movement to be, or tribals to rebel against the British, would be the fact that you have the land revenue settlements are applied in areas which were previously not part of agrarian society. So tribals shifting agriculture, slash and burn, they're doing their own thing. But land revenue settlements are now going to ask for revenue from them, rent and revenue. But they have no conception of private property. They have no conception of private property. Related to this is the second cause, which is money lenders, zamindars encroach, or rather capture tribal land as cultivable land. That if I'm a zamindar, I have been given, for example, by the DC a land in the Chota Nagpur plateau, I would go there because I have to generate revenue. So now these money lenders and these zamindars are the problem because they are the outside element which destroy tribal life. There is also the third, which is British colonial policies. British colonial policies which create British officers or agents into the areas. A very important impact of three is called colonial forest policy, in which forests are made into reserve forests in which the only the British can operate. And last but not the least is direct conquest. In certain areas, for example, with the for example the Kukis, for example, multiple tribes, Nagas, Kukis, the Garo Khaise, Jaintia. So it's proper battles which happened in Mizoram, in Manipur, in Meghalaya. But the most interesting out of this is the reserve forest concept, wherein forests forest is a private resource or a community resource. Forest is a private resource, community resource. It's a community resource. It's for everyone. Now, what the British do is that the people who are operating in these forests, they are using forest produce, they have their own life. They have their own life. But the British will start to say, no, this is a reserved forest. Only our way of moving, our permissions are needed to go inside. Basically, tribes who had resided for thousands of years in that forest would now be evicted because they were not seen as public property or public land, but reserved forest of the British. And another very important policy of the British was forest policy was that they were doing it for timber. They wanted a lot of wood, which led to deforestation. And in that context, they also changed in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh the species of trees which were there. Previously, there could be more alpine forests, but what they introduced in this area is a very specific species which has made these areas very prone to forest fires today. What is that? What is that species of trees called? Which is now very common. Very good, Karan. Very good. It is called. It's called chirpine forests. Mangroves. Seriously, mangroves are in marshy territory. We're talking about hill terrain. Chirpine forests are very good in paper production. The bark is very good for paper production. But chirpine forests are very, very volatile when it comes to heat and forest fires. Very, very high. So most of the forest fires which we have today is because of the fact that the British destroyed the species diversity in this area for their own purposes. So if you look at it, be it the peasant, be it the tribals, they have very legitimate reasons to go against the British. In certain cases, the British were ready to give concessions, and they will. But when the movement was directed clearly towards the British, they even used the military to crush all of these rebellions. Now, are we clear about the cause? Do you understand the four major causes as written here? Revenue settlements into tribal areas, wood in 19th century, Forest Act, which made them reserve forest, oppression of the policemen and government agents, moneylender traders, and even Christian missionaries. Christian missionaries were one of the biggest issue in tribal areas. Most of the people who were converted to Christianity by these Christian missionaries were Chota Nagpur Plateau based tribals who were forced into it. They did not know what they were getting into. So if they ask you what are the causes, generic causes of the tribal movement, are we in a position to say and write the answer yes or no? Yes. Yes. Vivek, you've written no. Why? Everyone's written yes. I have one no. Why? How to club them in answer? What do missionaries in tribal area do? Missionaries find it a fertile area for conversion. Now, how to club them in answer? Okay. If you write each of them under one bullet point, count how many words this is. Vivek, and no one else is going to count. Vivek, count how many words this is in front of your screen. Many of these. Yes, yes, Kishan, yes. Actually, exactly. All this ethnic conflict has been created by the British only. You have written dozens. Either you are very smart or I am a fool, or everyone else who is here also a fool. I don't know what you get out of doing this, but sure, why not? It's 80 words. So yes, thank you. Now, if you are able to write a standard introduction on the top and a standard conclusion in the below, 20 words and 30 to 20 words, don't you automatically get a 150-word answer? We'll talk about that, Akash. That is a later response. So I have made these areas and sections in a way that the answer is already there. Can I move on? If you have wasted enough time, if we illustrate, would it be more? See, only illustrate, Kishan, if you have to basically go forward vis-a-vis writing 250 words. Then you have to write one line more. Vivek, I understand what you do. I remember what you did in world history very well. And some of us were there also. 51 questions picked up from a random test series you send me to answer in the doubt session. And you did not come in the doubt session itself. So Vivek Bhushan, I know when you join and I know what you do very well. Not calling you out, but telling you that we aren't fools. Because you're going to do the same thing here again. You did it in science and technology also this time I saw. When Rashesh sir asked for a doubt session, you sent 53 questions randomly and then again did not come for the session. So this anonymity in this interface does not mean that we don't understand the pattern. So I remember, I think some of you were in that world history batch itself, where we took the questions and I was asking for your name multiple times. Kishan, yes, you remember, right? 51 questions, random questions. So doubt session was in morning of world history. So 51 questions you will send out of random test series. Evening batch, not morning batch. Forget. I watched recording. Tina watched the recording, she observed. Genuine questions we take. By writing a no, what are you trying to do here? And I'm doing it because it's the morning. We have to go till 8. So I don't want nonsense from your side. Sundaresh, you don't need to make the tables. It's already there in that. Okay, perfect. Now, for the purpose of your revision, now that we can move on from the nuisance, tribal movements in mainland, which is Chota Nagpur Plateau and in that area, and the tribal in the frontier regions, which would mean in the either northeastern sector or the northwestern sector. I have already compiled it for you. Now, please be very clear about one thing. You may be from this region and you realize that maybe the region is not right or the leader is not right. Remember one thing that these have been picked up by the standard books, which would be Bipin Chandra, which would be standard books. So even if there is a discrepancy, the NCRT and the standard books are giving us this information. So I would be very clear in saying to you that there would be discrepancies for sure, but you have to go with this face value. Are you getting my point? That there's no other option. There's no other option but to do that only, which is to go straight forward in that direction, vis-a-vis with this information. Are we clear about this? See, if you can learn one each day, more than enough. I have not tried to waste your time in making these yourself, or I'm making it in class. I've already made it already. So my only request to you is that if you can remember one of them, and the ones which we have to discuss, we'll discuss. We have to discuss Chuar, we have to discuss the Munda and the Santhal and the Kol. But the ones which are already in this, just go with the face value. Acceptable to everybody? I've tried to minimize the issues for you. I've tried to minimize the issues for you because it is already a very problematic zone of your preparation. Too much data, what to do with it? I've tried to minimize it as much as possible. As I told you, 5 modules are problematic: wars, the advent, this socialist reform movement, 2 modules, and tribal peasant. As you will see, once we will go into 1857, the whole taste will change, the whole approach will change, the idea will change. So there could be a discrepancy, but I will not give you both the answers because then you will mess it up in the examination. So whatever is given here is the accepted point. This is the last major module where you have facts. Learn them systematically, and I can guarantee to you that you don't need to worry about this too much. The questions which will come in the mains examination are going to be conceptual, which is what is the cause, what is the significance, what is the characteristics, where they have already basically given you that also in a very systematic fashion. I've tried to minimize the issues here as much as possible. I've tried to iron them out. Now, let's talk about the ones which we have to discuss. For example, Budo Bhagat, very important personality for the coals, and they are coming from the Chota Nagpur plateau. Not very happy about the money lenders and the landlords entering into their area. And the point was that the British first tolerated, but once it went out of hand, they used to always use the military and crush the rebellion. And coal was one such which started like that. Then you have the two most interesting ones and very sophisticated understanding of colonialism, which is Santhal rebellion. Santhal, Sidhu and Kanhu Murmu were the two who mobilized close to 10,000 Santhals, and they declared rebellion not against any agent but British colonialism. This is why Santhal and Birsa Munda is considered very important of the Munda rebellion, because they were understanding that it is okay the money lenders and the protectors, but they did understand that it was the British who was the problem. And therefore, from the Bhagalpur to the Rajmahal Hills sector, they were able to proclaim their own independent area for a very long time. However, once the British became very active and cognizant of the Santhal rebellion itself, they captured this area very quickly, and they used the military very effectively to destroy the Santhal rebellion. At the same time, it is only the Santhals and the Mundas who were able to defeat. No other power till this point had ever defeated properly a British army. The Sultans were able to defeat by holding certain positions with primitive weapons. They were able to hold an area. But as I said, once the police was not able to do it, the military will be brought in, and in 1856, these two celebrated leaders will be martyred. Thereafter, we have the Munda uprising. Again, very interesting, starting from the Ranchi sector, Bhagwan Birsa Munda. And he used to argue, and he was seen as a person who understood colonialism very well. He was able to establish a separate power and a separate government himself. And he's known for his legendary speeches and legendary ideas of how there could be a new beginning when the British are gone. He also disliked the moneylenders, the zamindars, how they ill-treated the Munda tribe itself. and he will go against the British in the Chota Nagpur Plateau. Again, the British will mobilize the army and capture him and martyr him. But be it the Munda uprising or be it the Santhal uprising, one thing was very sophisticated, which is their conception of British colonialism. Now people were understanding, and they were at least understanding, it was not the agent who was the problem, it was the British who was the problem. Then you have one uprising which you will find in two terms. One is, it's called the freedom of the Jungle Mahal under Durjan Singh, who basically went after the Zamindar, who was a Zamindar, but he hated the way the British were destroying this sector. And it is also called the Ugluan uprising, because the Birsa Munda tribe is also called Ugluan. Now, Chuar uprising, we don't use the word Chuar too much because it's a word which has been given to the Aboriginal tribe of that area by the British, and it has a derogatory connotation. And therefore, in the examination, if it says freedom of the Jungle Mahal, it is referring to the Chuar uprising. Please note this because this has come 2-3 times in mocks. You will find this in mocks. They will try to confuse you which this is. So to remember Durjan Singh and freedom struggle of the Jungle Mahal. Now thereafter, we have to discuss the characteristics and nature. Can I do that? I have to now discuss characteristics and nature, and that is what really matters to us. This is where the mains questions come from. Everything else can be managed from the PPT, and which is the table itself. This is where the mains theoretical questions come, and most importantly, how you will manage a question like that. Now, please pay attention to what is the strength and automatically also the weakness of the tribal rebels. We saw in the peasant, it was about peasant, it was against agents, and as soon as there was a concession, they used to be happy. Now it's not about concessions, it's about something else. Now you see, tribal uprising, the strength is the weakness. Obviously, they have localized issues. That will always be the issue. But their tribal identity was an important way of mobilization. So their localized identity was very good because then 10,000 Santals, 50,000 Mundas can come together. But how is this a weakness also? How is this a weakness? Tell me. How is this a weakness? It's a weakness because you have your own unity, but the Mundas will never go with the Santals. So there's no coordination, and the issues are very specific, and there's no tribal collaboration. So basically, their biggest strength is their weakness also. Because they start localized, but they remain localized also. Because tribe coordination is something which will not happen only. So it may be intra-unity, but inter-tribe unity cannot be there only. Thereafter, the fact of the matter remains is that they have primitive weapons. That is a characteristic, but that is also a weakness. Because when it came to guns and muskets and proper firearms, there was no way that the primitive weapons were ever going to take any form of chance against them. So one is identity formation. The leaders are very, very important. Leaders are seen as gods. They are shown as Messiah-like characteristics. It was believed that Birsa Munda bullets should not hit. The fact is that they create a certain aura. They have a certain localized aura-based leadership. But outside, they're nothing. And their localized nature makes sure that the tribal rebellions remain within themselves, and the British can one by one one by one, capture or suppress these areas. We don't know the backdrop of Mundas and Santhal. Shreyas, you tell me right now. Forget the backdrop. Even if I go into the proper detail, you think two tribes will come together? Even today, two tribes. And you already have an example which is happening in India and has a major repercussion for Northeast, and throughout Northeast there are tribal violence and ethnic violence. Manipur is an example that the British, how they schismed, how they created these divisions, still today create a lot of problems. Please understand this point. British only knew how to divide properly. And that is why they were very good at what they were doing. So please be very clear. I can give you backstory. The conclusion will be the same. These, beat Munda Santhal, beat Kol Munda, beat any combination, they will fight alone, but they will not come together, because that is not how tribes work. Please understand this point. If princely states could not come together with the INC, an Indian was not supporting an Indian, when the Marathas were not supporting the Mysore sector, the Marathas were not supporting the Tipu Sultan, when the same ruler is not, Holkars are not supporting Scindias and Bajirao II, how can you expect that? Are they tribes? Please understand this point. Somehow the story remains the same. Somehow the story remains the same. Disunity is something which basically is going to be used by the British, but I don't say that tribal disunity is something which is created. Tribes themselves work like that. Tribes themselves work like that. Tribal identity is very, very important. Can we say feudatory mentality? No, feudatory mentality, Sabita, would not be true, because feudatory mentality then needs to be under one setup. Then generalization is going to become too much. That is not feudatory mentality, that is politics for you. You see, do political parties come together over issues? They don't. That is politics. That is pure politics. It's not feudatory mentality, it's pure politics. Okay, even yes, that is the point. See, I've written everything what you need to write in the examination. Don't worry. These are points. If you write them in small, you will get 150. In big, you will get 250. I know that it is not given very well in standard books, so you can see there. Tribal identity, ethnic ties were a binding force of these movements. These identities united them to fight against the outsiders, but all outsiders were not recognized as enemies, which is a good thing, because they understood where cooperation was important. However, they were getting little bit of support from their own economy, but the British, when they created an economy around them, it was very hard to, in a way, compete with that also. So people who supported the tribal economy were also left alone. And the anger was against moneylenders and traders in most of the cases, but they did recognize that sometimes it is the agents of colonialism and also colonialism. Now, the common cause of the movements were laws imposed by the colonial government, which destroyed traditional socio-economic framework. Many uprisings were led by Masiha-like figures. For example, Bhagwan Birsa Munda, who was seen as a god-like figure who could be a Masiha against the British rule itself. And there are leaders who said that we derive authority from God itself, that God told us to rebel against the British. That is a good thing, because that allows for intra-unity. But because tribals have their own gods and their own understanding, it would not be something which will work throughout. They also tend to argue that they have magical powers, maybe or may not be true, but the fact is that they create a certain aura. The uprisings, most important, localized, isolated, lacked any modern feeling of nationalism. The movements mostly were violent and frequent. Aura means a certain type of image, how you have a certain aura of a personality, a certain personality, behavior, or a certain characteristics around him. So God-like attribute, they are very, very powerful. They're very, very accepted by everybody. But again, that will not be true for someone else. And therein, this is the characteristic. And this will always also be the weakness. I've written the weaknesses also in that way. They want, they want old agrarian order back. The old agrarian order should be back. Spontaneous, and thousands of tribals were coming from different regions, but it is still regional. And therefore, if you look at them going after outsiders, their warfare is unequal and based on primitive weapons. So in a nutshell, they are localized, isolated, primitive, have have a certain aura of a leader. They're talking about an old order, and the problem is they want to go back to that order itself. Now, when we talk about the weakness, it comes out of each of the characteristic itself. You can see. Again, I've written it in such a manner that if you can learn these points, put them down in your own language, you will get the answer. Localized, isolated revolts did not get any support from other movements happening around them, and basically, they will not even get support from other tribes itself. Second, there is a conservative traditional outlook because they want to go back to something, and the movement arose out of local grievances, so therefore it was localized. Now the biggest point is which I want to discuss with you. Okay, the tribes rebelled. What after that what after that tell me. The tribe rebelled. Now what? Come on, tell me. Now what? Concession. Okay, you got the concession, but the issue will be back. You were able to defeat the British also. Nobody was able to crush you also. You were able to become independent. Then what? By doing it, have you killed the viceroy, removed the British from India? So even if they become independent, one day or the other, the British will come back and they will crush you. This is a very important question you need to understand, because we'll discuss 1857 very soon. What is the long-term vision? Nothing. It's just that we have an issue, either we get a concession or we get crushed. The larger issue is, see, again I'm telling you, there's a river and there's a sewage line, which is the British. It dumps all pollutants. So if I'm doing water treatment here, will it still solve the issue which is polluting this river? So until and unless I don't find a solution for this, as much as I can have thousands of sectors in which we are treating that water, which is rebellions and revolts, the water will still get polluted. So if I call these rebellions as war of independence, would it be correct? The answer is no. Because if independence, then okay. But what is the vision after that? I'm trying to inculcate this understanding into you that you don't have to learn this point. The strength is the weakness. Regional war of independence. Firstly, that's called an oxymoron. A regional war of independence. Independence is of a nation. regionality of independence is that nothing but autonomy. So understand this point. Autonomy and independence are two very different things. When Awadh, Bengal, and Carnatic, Hyderabad got independence from the Mughals, did the Mughals cease to exist? They were still there. That is why I call them successor states who are autonomous. I don't say Bengal country. The country of Bengal was created. The country of Awadh was created. I don't say that. I am trying to develop something with you which is very significant for 1857. Very significant for 1857. Independence means, see, you don't like me, maybe. If I get replaced, you get independence. The answer to that question is no. You have replaced the power, but the institution remains the same. So I can become independent regionally, but eventually something is going to happen for sure. So a lot of you, and I'm going to have this conversation in the next 5 minutes. I will give you free hand. We'll discuss. But think about it. And now, see, I told you, as soon as I come out of this unit, you will see the nature of conversation will change totally. Now, we know it is localized, it is isolated. We know it is based on local grievances. We know that there is no long-term vision. It is conservative, it is traditional outlook. And we also understand that they have no revolutionary idea of doing something much bigger than what they were. And we also understand that they had no alternative solution. It's just a rebellion and it's just a revolt. It's just them rebelling. It was a frustration which was coming out. Nothing more, nothing less. So if they ask you about the nature and the weakness, will you be able to articulate the larger argument of the answer? That the characteristic and the weakness are stemming from the characteristics itself. Now I will have a small conversation with you, which you don't have to learn. Do not learn this. But I want to show you something. Which is how today we manage tribes is not something which we came up with ourselves, but was actually something which the British developed in themselves. And the concept is the concept of non-interference, policy of non-interference. So today we have what measures? Fifth schedule, sixth schedule. We have the concept of the power of the president and the governor being more powerful, and the governor and the president have the power to not apply certain laws on these areas. We have independent areas. We have what are called scheduled areas. In the scheduled areas, not everything automatically applies, and there's a lot of discretionary power which has been given to the president and the governor with regards to that. True. This is how we operate scheduled tribe areas and scheduled areas. That is the constitutional safeguard we have. We have positive discrimination in the form of reservation for STs. And we also have the concept of how we have areas in which the areas under which the tribes are protected. You have to take the inner line permit to go into certain areas. You have tribal councils who are more important than the Panchayati Raj institutions. That is the basic point. Now, this is not something which we developed. This all came out of the British, in the sense that, you see, the first act which tried to do this was called the Government of India Act 1870. The Government of India 1870, it gave the Governor General the power to approve regulations for special areas. Special areas. Special areas. Listen to this word. Special areas. And it was said that there could be a different regulatory mechanism and a different act itself. Now, it was taken one step further through the Scheduled District Act of 1874. Don't have to learn this. Try to understand the relevance today. This was the first time that they started to now say that the local government should designate a certain area as a scheduled district. Scheduled district in one area would be a district which should not be touched too much. It's an area which should be under the tribe. So the British, what they realized was that rather than fighting with these tribes, it's better that we don't interfere only. And now comes the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, 1919, and it starts to introduce the concept of core periphery. It will start to say that these areas are backward tracts because they are based on tribal polity, so they're backward. And now wholly excluded, modified excluded. Areas in which you cannot go fully, and the areas in which there can be some interference. No power to make laws in wholly excluded, all power vested in governor. Does not this sound similar? Does not it ring a bell to you? That aren't these the same templates on which how today the power of scheduled areas is divided? Power scheduled areas is also divided the same way, wherein you have areas in which no power or law of the parliament applies, and it is the governor who can decide. State governments can't do anything in this area. And if you go one step further, the Government of India Act 1935 use the word excluded, partially excluded. And now partially excluded areas were a ministerial responsibility. The Minister of Tribal Affairs. So understand this point that the British developed a strategy till which we use today, the idea of how to manage tribes. Unfortunately, the British divided this area in such a bad manner that either insurgency or intertribal conflict or tribal conflict or demands for states still remain. So we are paying the price, and the communities are paying the price for something the British did, which is distort this whole sector. Now, if we are clear about this, finally, we finish the 3 modules which have been taking away your sleep, which is social justice reform movement and peasant and tribal. The boxes will help you. The table you have to make will help you. Just have to go through the basic facts. Don't get caught up here. And I am extremely thankful for your patience, because now the taste will change totally. That factual part is over, and now we are at the halfway point of our course, and I can start now these modules which are truly related to the examination, out of which 90% of the questions will come from and are very important for your examination or generally your understanding. So pat on your back. You can congratulate yourself for coming out unscathed, wounded but not dead out of this area. And now I want to have a small conversation with you, after which we'll take a break and come back and start 1857. Feels nice that this is over? Yes? Samita, the way the British had already integrated, we had no other option. That's the problem. We had no other option. Okay, yes, perfect. Now, let's talk about 1857. So what is the 1857 revolt? I want to know the baseline at which you are operating. What is the 1857 revolt? Economic history is actually the most interesting and most logical in that sense. It's a Sepoy mutiny. Sepoy mutiny. Kumkum says first war of independence. Very good. First war of independence. End of Zaiko. Zafar, you want to say. First war of independence. First war of independence. Revolt that changed everything. Resentment against the British East India Company. Mangal Pandey. All province protest against the British. First war of independence. rebellion by kingdoms and sepoys against East India Company, mutiny in northern India, first widespread sepoy mutiny, end of East India Company, Muslim conspiracy, okay, agony of the frustrated, very good, accumulated frustration, first unity, shimmering discontent, realize that we can fight them, okay, accumulation of revolts, sowed seeds of power struggle, opens up crown, organically happened, culminate. Okay, now, what is the cause of the revolt of 1857? You told me what it is. And 90% of you may say it is the first war of independence. Perfect. What are the causes? Enfield rifle, gunpowder, Ammangal Pandey, doctrine of lapse, rifle, grease cartridge, rifle, Mangal Pandey, individual resentment, subsidiary alliance, religious policy, divide, famines, crown, religious sentiment hurt, doctrine of lapse, saturation, taxation, doctrine of lapse, religious interference, pension, Bengal army. Okay. Now what you're doing is that you're adding all my points and giving it to me only. Okay, now listen to me. See. Land revenue. Yes, perfect. Okay, now listen to me. When we talk about 1857, most of you are falling into two traps. One, which is propaganda used in the nationalist movement, but is not the right categorization of the movement itself. When you say first war of independence, you are basically quoting me V.D. Savarkar. But the problem is that V.D. Savarkar himself did not use the word first. He only used War of Independence. That is the name of his book. But what V.D. Savarkar was doing was totally different to what the 1857 really was. And second trap which you're falling is created by the British, which is you're talking about religion and you're talking about grease cartridge and Enfield rifle. Now, basically, if I go with what you are saying to me, not everybody, but majority, you are saying that the people of India said that all the looting is fine, all the killing is fine, all the famines are fine. वो सब ठीक है, all that is fine. But cartridge नहीं देना चाहिए था. That the grease cartridge is the problem. Basically, everything was fine. Loot us, drain us, will not rebel. But we will rebel when Mangal Pandey will rebel against a cartridge. It was one small cartridge, a gun in which pig and what we call as cow fat was used. So because you gave us this, we have no problem with nothing else. We have problem with this only. This is called trivialization. And the first history of the 1857 revolt was written by a person called K. and Mallison. There are two British officers, JWK and Mallison. And see, by saying religious sentiment, grease cartridge, you are proving the British right. That by we Indians are religiously oriented. Till you loot us, we don't care, but religion नहीं touch करना था. कुछ भी करना था, but Jayakant Shikri का ego hurt नहीं करना. That you'd have done anything But religion is something which we are very touchy about. No, no. Religion nahi touch karna. Everything else is fine. And you are basically proving to the British that we are irrational. We don't care about our economy. We don't care about our political leaders. We don't care about what is happening to India. We don't care about Sati. We don't care about these things. We only care about one thing, which is that cow and pig fat was the line where we draw. So basically, you will do everything. You will do everything. We don't touch it. Religion is something which we are too touchy about. Fear of something, sure. But 1857 is not just about grease cartridges. It's really not about grease cartridges. It was the trigger, maybe. It may be the last line, sure. The Sipahi rebelled not because he randomly was given one cartridge. There are much bigger systemic issues than grease cartridges to actually trigger the revolt. See, what I mean to say is very simple thing. The British would want you to believe that it is just grease cartridges. You've been taught like that also in schools. But the problem is that in the school, you're a 6th, 7th class student, you cannot be expected nuance. See, to a child, I will not go and say, okay, so colonialism is when the balance of payment and the comparative advantage Greenwich. 6th class, 7th class school child, he will start to talk about comparative advantage. He will throw him the book out of the window itself. So 1857 is about grease cartridges, sure, that children can understand. But that is also propaganda. For 3 to 5 generations of historians after independence, the British type of argument was absorbed. That is why this word which you said, this itself is British propaganda. By calling it a mutiny, you argue that no one else was involved except for the military. So in India, everybody was sleeping. Everybody was like, perfect. We enjoy British colonialism. These military people don't. This irrational Mangal Pandey, this irrational Meerut mutiny, this Bengal army is the problem. What do the British get out of this propaganda? They justify their rule. The British, if you remember, what did I tell you? The British criticism was what? That we are inferior. And we are inferior. That is why our very small mind was not able to go beyond cows and pigs. That is the concept. That when we touched the religion of this brown man, he had a problem. But basically, it's not true. And when we come back from the lunch break, the first hour of our conversation is going to be about the causes of the revolt of 1857. And the endeavor would be to understand, was it just that cartridge, or did that cartridge be the last nail in the coffin? And was it really just our religious fear that played out? And why is that the Sipahi did it? not someone else. And the biggest point is the word which you will use forever, the word the British use and a lot of historians still use, the 1857 revolt was unprecedented. It was spontaneous, unprecedented. Nobody saw it coming. Am I correct? That the revolt of 1857 is unprecedented. So basically, if I remove this very big word unprecedented, what it means is that we woke up on 11th May 1857 and said, now let's rebel. Ab ladte hain. Before 1857, we didn't care. One random day we woke up and said, no, this is not right, let's change it. 1857 revolt, if 1857 revolt is unprecedented, then for the past 2 hours I've been telling you rebellion after rebellion. Then what are they? Those are building blocks on which 1857 stands. But by categorizing 1857 unprecedented, you want to say that Velu Thampi was not doing anything. That Paikas, the Ramosis, the Santhal, the Mundas, they were just in a different country altogether. I will leave you on this note that remember, revolt of 1857 cannot be categorized as a war of independence. I will tell you why. Then we will discuss nature. Second, there is a lot to be known about 1857, which I will tell you through my own. You will not find it in books. I will tell you the story of Delhi, something which you would not know. The story of Kanpur, 2 stories I will discuss with you properly. Other areas we will discuss Jhansi and all basic things. Delhi, Kanpur give you 2 very interesting perspectives. First, about what was the nature. Second, what was the 2 characteristics which dominated 1857. And the second is going to be our endeavor to understand and declutter the causes. Because the causes is one question which will come in the examination very clearly and straightforward. And you need to be cognizant of that in the right perspective in that sense. So I hope that now the conversation is going to become a little bit more theoretical and understanding based, and your pain is over. So have a good lunch. I will see you at 2 p.m. When we start at 2 p.m., we will start 1857. Part B will be all about 1857. And by part C, we will be entering nationalism. Done? Is there any hope of success of 1857 if there was supported by regional kingdoms? We'll discuss that, Gaurav. There's an optimism in it, but that is not going to work. Okay. See you at 2. Rejuvenate, eat, and let's come back.